Hi, Dan Stein here, President of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. You know the drill. Hit that subscribe button if you want to get all of FAIR's great content, and I know you do. We got a great conversation for you today. I'm joined by Congressman Andy Biggs. Okay, we're talking the Fighting Fifth in Arizona. This guy is out front on major border security issues across the nation. He co-chairs the House Border Security Caucus. He has been on the front lines in the effort to help the American people understand just what's going on the border, why it's out of control, why we have a crisis on our border, and most importantly, who is responsible. Welcome, Congressman.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be with you. Thanks for what you guys do at FAIR.
Well, my pleasure. Anything we can do to help you out there. Listen, how did this whole thing unfold? How did we get to this mess we're in right now?
Well, it started during the campaign season. If you remember, Joe Biden and company, they all debated and promised to have an open border. That's really what they did. We could go back over a long history of everything from sanctuary cities, but the reality is that promise of an open border led to almost immediately upon being sworn in on January 20th, Joe Biden began issuing orders and rescinding policies that had brought our border under operational control. And make no mistake, the cartels watch. They watch to see what our political scenarios are like up here and how that will affect illegal immigration, because they view illegal immigration into the United States as a real money binge for them. So what they do, they were advertising. And that's why you had thousands of people sitting in the Zocalo of Tijuana. They were waiting to come across for that moment. And many of those folks have come across. They still have folks down there in that area in Tijuana. But that's how we got here, is those policies that were working were rescinded by President Biden almost immediately upon his being sworn in.
So really, have we ever had, that you're aware of, are you aware in the history of the United States, a president coming in and intentionally sabotaging proven and effective deterrent strategies to encourage compliance with U.S. immigration laws?
No, this is a first for us. It's a low light, and this goes for a lot of reasons. But no, this is intentional, and I'm glad you identify it as such, Dan, because I believe it is willful and intentional conduct.
Well, how's your relationship going with the Homeland Security Secretary, Mr. Mayorkas? Is he respecting the caucus and coming forth with a lot of good intel and information?
Well, I know you're asking that because we've sent him letters asking him to answer questions for us. We've asked him to come into the Border Security Caucus. We've asked him to come into the House Freedom Caucus. He's not done anything. In fact, he's purposefully undermining what's happening at the border. And so my relationship with him is he needs to be fired. He needs to go.
Yes, well, we've called for his removal as well. The guy is not only not a straight shooter, he was raised on Goebbels' knee, as far as I'm concerned. He seems to be someone who believes he has an inherent right to bend the law to admit inadmissible aliens without limit by using parole and other factors which in my observations, Congress has repeatedly tried to limit. And of course, they've turned TPS, temporary protected status, into something of a sham as well. The extension of new TPS grants to Haitians, now accompanied by the expansion of the so-called CAM program, Central American Minors Program, or Camelot. Okay, we call it, the original CAM was CAM, but now we have Camelot. It now includes a whole lot more people. Means you can marry TPS with an opportunity to have the government bring in your relatives, right? So this Mayorkas guy has turned into a willing co-conspirator with traffickers and cartels, essentially conducting business operations on behalf of them at taxpayer expense. Am I mischaracterizing this?
No, I mean, I've often said, I know there's others who've said it, that the United States government acts as the logistics arm for the cartels. And by the way, the cartels control our border. And so everybody's coming in with drugs, sex trafficking, human trafficking, everybody crossing our border, even for legitimate purposes, they're being watched by the cartels. And so when we move them, like you've just described what Mayorkas is having ICE and Homeland move, these people anywhere in the country they want to go, we're basically making it easy on the cartels. So the cartels used to have to bring them someplace into the country to get their pay. Now they just bring them to the border. We then take care of releasing them into the country, and the cartel's already earned its money. And if they're not getting it, then they're using indentured servitude. But yeah, no, this really is a huge, huge problem. Exactly as you say, we are distributing these illegal aliens and even drugs all over the country.
Would you say that the president is engaged enough at this level to understand what, in fact, the people working for him are doing?
I don't think he's. I think he's got some cognitive issues going on, Dan, and I think he doesn't really know what's happening on the border. And so when you put in a liberal dude like Mayorkas, or you bring in the three that he's trying to get confirmed in the Senate to basically take over, they're all open borders, sanctuary city folks. I just don't think he has any clue what's happening.
Why are they doing this in the end? What's the major motivation? What's the end game here?
Well, if philosophically speaking, I would say that the left is long desired to eliminate borders. You've seen that, and so they don't like the Westphalian states. So that's one motivation. The second motivation is the Democrats can't win on policy anymore at all. So they need to bring in a new group of a new demographic, and so they're bringing them across the border. They're going to try to buy them off. And I guess the third thing is there's pressure from a number of business entities and groups in this country that would like low wage labor, and they don't care that we have unskilled low wage workers who could work in many of the jobs that they want, but this is easier for them to come, and quite frankly, we have seen actually abuses of these people coming in. So those are three reasons that I can think of.
Yes, well, it seems like these tech oligarchs and some billionaires, they oppose three things: borders, nations, and police. I'm a big fan of capitalism. Market capitalism has been the greatest engine of human progress in the last, barely since the beginning of human race. And at the same time, monopoly capitalism or oligarchic capitalism, which grows too big and becomes multinational, and then works in league with government, can then be used by the government in order to pursue a suppression agenda of free ideas or even free markets. And when we see the degree of now political censorship going on in this country with the co-complicity of these tech oligarchs and these companies, you have to wonder, small business is so important for maintaining a robust capitalist and competitive system. Yet these tech oligarchs don't like competition. They prefer regulation as long as it keeps them in power, if you will, or dominating in a monopolistic position. They see the movement of people as something involving low-cost labor. Maybe it helps them with their investing in China. And despite the fact that President Trump won the election in 2016, explaining the labor displacement issues, how is it, Congressman Biggs, I have to ask this question, why is it that every time the black community speaks up for itself, as we saw in the 1960s, and then we saw again in 2020, why is the Democrat Party response always to then unleash a massive torrent of more immigration to take American jobs? This is what Lyndon Johnson did, and this is what Joe Biden is doing. Why is that their response when a tight labor market lifts all boats?
Well, what their response is because, first of all, they believe that they're going to have to supplant some of that base. You've seen a growing realization within the black community that Democrat policies have really undercut their communities for literally generations. And so part of the Democrat leadership is like, well, we got to bring these people in because we're losing some of our traditional base, which are black voters. So that would be one thing that comes to mind. The other thing that comes to mind is the Democrat leadership, they simply have no understanding of economics, to be frank with you, Dan. I mean, they really don't. That's why you get everything from, well, we're going to raise a bunch of taxes and impose regulation, and we can't understand why our economy is not growing, to we're going to throw trillions of dollars into the marketplace and then wonder why our currency is devalued and we have inflation. They just simply don't understand basic fundamental supply, demand, labor, and labor force economic principles. And so I think part of me wants to say it's all nefarious, but there's this other part of me that says I just think that they don't understand the way the world works.
Well, I think you're being charitable, but I'll take that. Now, you've got your excellent leadership has produced some excellent proposals. You've got some great thinking. I think folks in Arizona should realize that you are not only criticizing the administration, but working very hard to come up with important and durable solutions to fix the border crisis and fix our immigration system. You want to run a couple of those by us on one of the key things that you think we should be out here supporting?
Yeah, I have a number of bills that I think address some serious issues. One of them is a combination where we take care of the Flores case, which has caused effectively a catch and release system to perpetuate. So to fix that.
Well, let me just make sure everyone knows what you're talking about. That's a settlement from the 1990s that requires the government to release aliens within a short period of time, originally applied to minors, now extended to families. And it's basically, despite the efforts of the Trump administration, courts, a particular judge in particular, has required that this policy remain in place. It is one of the great Achilles heels right now in the government's deterrence strategy to detain aliens and discourage fraudulent claims. What Congressman Biggs is trying to do is fix this problem. We call it the Flores problem. And that's what you can write when you write to Congress. You can call it that, basically allowing the government to detain aliens for as long as required to ensure the integrity of the system, that they show up for their hearings, and that we discourage unlawful claims.
Yeah, Dan, I couldn't have explained it any better, but I will just tell you that one thing that happens is if you fix the Flores problem, you actually take away certain incentives that people have to come here illegally now. And you undermine some of the cartels' advertising and their marketing scheme and their transport scheme. Then the other part of that bill is the asylum issue, where we have so many fraudulent claims. And so we try to give a better definition of credible fear. We try to get them back out and use what basically international law, which means you got to go back to the nearest country that you could have applied for asylum in. In other words, we move them out of the country. It's akin to the Remain in Mexico policy and the agreements that we had with the Northern Triangle states. So that's one bill. We try to take care of a couple of those issues. Also another piece of legislation gets to rebuilding a fence. Dan, I introduced this legislation back in 2018 because there's so much money that goes over in these dollars that are sent home out of our country. And so basically my proposal was to put a tax on that, because if you tax that, literally you would bring in a very minimal tax, literally $5 to $10 billion a year, which is more than enough to build that border fence, put technology in place, put material there, and give our Border Patrol agents plenty of opportunity and equipment to stop people, and it would provide a big deterrent. It was stopped, so we're trying to revive that bill as well.
Well, that would be an excellent idea, and certainly long overdue. It's interesting that the Biden administration has decided to leave holes in the fence, in a sense making the situation even worse by when they could easily fill up the rest of those gaps and at least make some kind of rational sense out of that even some Democrat administrations have supported barriers in the past. So now Mayorkas himself is kind of, all those proposals are certainly worthy of public support, and I encourage folks to get out there and support them. Mayorkas has said that he doesn't believe that anybody in any of the Northern Triangle countries could ever be, safe, and therefore the idea that someone is transiting those countries and therefore should be required under U.S. or international law to make that asylum claim in that country is a non-starter. Well, if you apply that reasoning and say, well, he gave grant of TPS to Haitians on the basis of an earthquake from 2010 or a hurricane or something, well, what would this, our assumption is he's going to start declaring TPS for all the Northern Triangle countries. And I read recently that some 20 Democrat senators are pushing him to declare 17 African countries TPS. I mean, essentially, Biden may turn around and have, like, the entire world get temporary protected status is one way of. Anyway, the whole prospect of this thing, asylum is supposed to be to protect people here legally, who came in legally and who, as a result of changed circumstances they could not have foreseen when they came, cannot return home. In order to work for positive political change, freedom, democracy back in their home country, and then encourage them to go back home when it's time to do so. TPS, by the same token, Congress explicitly intended it to be short-term. Wouldn't it be great for Haiti if the folks who've been here all this time learned job skills, learned how to start a business, went back to Haiti to put those skills to work? What is the point of creating a dependency society by having those people stay up here when they could be helping build their country by encouraging them to go back home? Am I missing something in this analysis?
No, you're not. I mean, there's so much with the TPS and the abuse that's gone on. We've got people that have been in this country for 25, 30 years under TPS authority. And they should have gone a long time ago. They should have gone back to been repatriated to their country. Ostensibly, these folks indicate to people who are talking to them that they really want to, their goal is to return to their home. But we're not seeing that. And so when you expand it, Dan, I mean, just think about this. If you continue to expand TPS authority and I think it runs right with it, it's correlated with this parole authority where we're looking for people and bringing them back in the country and we're just keeping people here. Those things actually go to the Democrat theory here, which we talked about earlier. They don't like borders. They don't like the Westphalian state. They like low skilled, low wage earners, and they anticipate that those people will be Democrat voters. And this, so never forget, this is all about, all that doesn't make any sense unless it's about power and control by one party. And that's what this is about. And so in reality, we need to get back to what the T in TPS stands for, which is temporary, and send folks home. But it's like the DACA argument. Well, they've been here so long. Well, where do you draw the line? Is it 6 months? Is it 6 years? Is it 16 years? What is it? And will it always be arbitrary? And the answer is yes, it will always be arbitrary. And it'll always favor the Democrat Party who's trying to use it to maintain control and power.
Right. Now, if you're allowing people to profit from having broken the law, you're going to get more of it. It's pretty straightforward stuff. All right, I have two final questions. Okay, if you're going to grade the administration on the immigration area on transparency, with A through F or 0 to 100 on this, what would you give them as a grade?
Well, if you're talking transparency, I'm going to give them a B, because you'd have to be asleep not to know what they're really trying to do, their goals, and how this is intentional, and know what their policy is, which is no policy other than an open border. So they're pretty transparent about it. I mean, I've taken them down from an A though, because they've been deceptive to some people by appointing Kamala Harris as your border czar. But then again, you can't take it down to an F because of that, because we all know that she's an open borders person. So of course she's not going to come to the border. Of course she's not going to do it. So by making her the czar, they were transparent. Nothing's going to happen. So if you're just talking transparency, I'm going to give them probably a B.
Okay, last question. What's the best part about running the Border Security Caucus?
It's getting to deal with folks like you, Dan, who share our fundamental belief that border security is fundamental to the national security of the United States of America. And so if I grade the overall policy of the Biden administration, it's an F, and we need to restore. And so what we do in the Border Security Caucus, we try to inform other members of Congress what's happening. I've led many, many delegations to the border. We want people to know in Congress what's happening. We want to keep them up to date so they can give that information to their constituency, because the left-wing press is not giving that out. They believe if you want a secure border that somehow you're xenophobic. So working together with other members of Congress who are like-minded on that, are willing to learn, as well as working with great groups like FAIR, those really, really a rewarding part of being part of the Border Security Caucus.
Well, couldn't say it better myself. That's why folks should join FAIR and certainly support the work of the House Border Security Caucus and the great work of Representative Andy Biggs, who's from, of course, Arizona's 5th District, fighting 5th, doing a super job and really honchoing the immigration issue for the House of Representatives. I want to thank you for joining me, Congressman. It's been a real pleasure. I'm Dan Stein. Again, hit that subscribe button, and thanks for joining.